Huvel, welcome back to the channel. My name is David. Today's video is going to be a little bit different. It's not a review per se. It's more a discussion on lenses and kind of building the perfect lens trinity for Sony E-mount, specifically using Sigma lenses. So this video is kind of like if I had to pick 3 lenses to use for the rest of my career, these would be the 3 lenses. Let me preface this by saying the lenses I'm picking for today's video are based off of my needs and my needs alone. This Trinity may or may not work for you. It's just really depending on your needs because your needs are different than my needs. So just keep that in mind going into the video. That said, I wanted to pick 3 lenses that had a lot of great synergy with one another and not too much overlap, because we tend to do this as photographers and videographers. We'll buy several lenses and then they end up having the same focal length that we already have a specific prime for. Let's say a 16 to 35, you have a 35 on the long end, then you have a 35 prime, and then 24 to 70 that also has a 35 in there. So essentially 3 focal lengths that are the same, redundancy, which, yeah, there's zooms and there's a bunch of different applications, but for the sake of the argument, redundancy. Now, I also shoot with 2 bodies, so I don't have to worry about swapping them out every few seconds because, oh, I need a tighter focal length, so I'll put this lens on. Oh, I need to go wider, I put this lens on. It's just easier to work with 2 bodies. However, if you have only 1 lens body, that's totally fine. You don't need 2 bodies. It's just the way I prefer shooting. Now, quick disclaimer, big thank you to Sigma for loaning me the 28 to 45mm f1.8. I really appreciate it. That said, Sigma doesn't get to preview this video. My opinions are my own. No money was exchanged, and I have to send the lens back when I'm done with it. Moving on, let's get started with this video. The first lens to start off the kit is essentially what's going to provide us with our wide angle to mid-range coverage. That lens is the Sigma 28 to 45mm f1.8 DG-DN Art. This lens is fantastic and it essentially replaces the need to carry a set of primes like a 28mm, a 35mm, a 40mm, and a 50mm. Let's be real, 45mm and 50mm is not that big of a difference, depending on who you ask. This lens shines in smaller venues or when you're able to move around and get close to your subject, like let's say a band performing on stage, or if you're doing a talking head interview, or if you're on a gimbal, let's say doing a wedding. Normally, I would shoot with the 24 to 70mm and then swap over to the 35mm f1.4 when it gets a little too dark for 2.8. So having my most used wide angle focal lengths in a zoom that is f1.8 all the way through is truly awesome. Now, in terms of image quality and autofocus, it's fantastic in both departments. Images are vibrant and full of life with great contrast. Autofocus is fast thanks to the HLA motors used in the lens. Is it heavy? Yes, but it's an f1.8 zoom that replaces several prime lenses, and because of that, I don't mind the weight too much. The price is super competitive as well, coming in at $13.49, which, considering that the lens replaces like 4 lenses, it's actually a bargain. Now, moving on to our next lens. For my second lens choice, I picked the Sigma 85mm f1.4 DG-DN Art. In a previous video, I mentioned that the 85mm is a great complementary lens to the 28 to 45. Now, this lens will essentially cover most of my telephoto needs. This lens also shines the best in medium venues where you just need a little bit more reach, but not too much, otherwise it will become a hindrance. The f1.4 aperture lets in plenty of light to help combat those dark environments I often find myself in. Now, in terms of image quality and autofocus, it's just as good as the 28 to 45. I love using this lens for live music because it makes my subjects pop from the background, and on a well-lit stage, it creates some very cool looking images. I also enjoy this lens for detail shots, B-roll, or a tight angle if I'm doing an interview style video. Now, while it is using a stepping motor over the HLA motor found in newer Sigma lenses, the lens is still incredibly fast in both photo and video applications. It also focuses faster than Sony's original 85mm f1.4 G Master, and it's also less expensive, coming in at $1,189, which is pretty good. Now, for my final lens choice, I picked the Sigma 70-200 f2.8 DG-DN OS Sports to round out the rest of the Trinity. Now, why this lens? Well, this focal range will cover my telephoto needs when I actually need the reach. Anything where the 85mm can't reach. This lens is perfect for large venue settings, like say the back of a church or a concert if you're shooting from the pit, or like the name suggests, sports, because it's a sports lens. Now, if I'm shooting something like a wedding, I usually lock this off on a tripod to get my long shots of the couple at the altar. However, if I do have to go handheld, the lens does have optical stabilization, which works in conjunction with my camera's IBIS, helping me get some steady shots. Autofocus wise, it's all done internally, and it sports Sigma's HLA motors, which are lightning fast for both photo and video work. Image quality, I feel, is on par with Sigma's Art Series lenses. It is a bit on the heavier side, but again, you have so much reach with this one lens, and that's usually something I don't mind as a trade-off. Not much more to say about this lens because it's a 70-200. A lot of photographers and videographers have one in their bag for when the situation calls for it. And that's the end of the video. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I had a lot of fun putting it together. Building kits is fun because it's like playing with Legos and you get to put stuff together and then you get some cool results. It's awesome. But I personally feel like these three lenses work the best together. They have a lot of synergy and there's not a lot of overlap either, which is great. And you know, like I kind of like said in previous videos, you don't always need like a 70-200, but it's nice to have it because again, the range. In most applications, I feel like I could get away with the 85mm focal length, but again, it's just depending on the venue. So I hope I was able to convey my thoughts on building this lens kit, and it helps you figure out what you want to put into your lens kit, Trinity. So that said, thank you again for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Follow me on Instagram at DLoVisuals to stay up to date with my latest adventures, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Hasta luego.